several answers from different people, and I have a feel of how COVID is treating us. With your permission, um, allow me to be sharing my screen. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Please enable me to share my screen.
Okay. Sorry, there you go.
All right, thank you.
So maybe as Roy sets up his presentation, you can tell us how COVID is treating you by dropping a message in the chat, and Roy can see that. Yeah, just take a minute and share with us on the chat. How has COVID impacted you and your finances? Keep the messages coming. This is Maureen Kuboka is saying we had to downsize and live within our budget. Very true. A lot of us have had to do that. Who else has something to share with us about how COVID is treating you?
In the meantime, let me know if the screen is fully shared.
Maybe you could go into presentation mode. Elvis is saying, had to rethink my personal budget and focus on saving more. Very smart, Elvis. It has left me feeling anxious and uncertain about the future. Again, very true. Ignatius, kindly mute your microphone. Thank you. That was from Angeline. Winnie is saying working from home enables us to save from the money used on transport. Indeed, now that you're not moving around a lot, you can make a saving there. Roy? Yeah, so it's clear that we have to make some adjustments to our budget. Francis is saying he's had to take children to shags due to COVID. Well, it's an opportunity for them to also enjoy the serenity of the village and learn a thing or two about how life goes on in the village. And then Quinta is saying, as a matter of fact, we have to live with COVID and readjust with the situation. Very true. For now, I've learned to save for the future. Thank you, Pauline. Michael is saying it has provided an opportunity to rethink what is necessary to invest time and money on. Very, very true. It's a wake up call for better planning. Thank you, Jane. Joyce is saying CSR activities have increased due to people needing support as a result of job loss, sickness, and even loss of loved ones. Very true. And our condolences to all those who have lost their loved ones during this COVID pandemic period. Priscilla is saying it made me smarter. That's good because we say that, or rather, it said that once bitten, twice shy. So you should be able to learn. We all should be able to learn from a situation and emerge as better people than when the situation began. So Roy, Back to you. Hello, Roy.
You said you can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see the screen. Just go to view on top. Yeah, and then presentation view. Can you see presentation view or presenter view? Okay, start slideshow, or rather go to slideshow.
Yeah, it was the slideshow I was starting.
Okay, go
But
to slideshow.
it was not. How is it from your end?
It's showing the small slides on the left.
Yeah, because on my end, it's
Uh,
already full screen.
okay, let's proceed then. Let's just proceed.
All right. But confirm that it's moving even as we proceed.
No, it's not moving. Maybe
Oh,
you could stop sharing and
let
start
me stop
again.
and let me stop and restart.
Yes. Sorry about that. Technical challenges. I can continue reading some of your messages coming through. Jeff is saying Kanisa is holding virtuals. It's a new normal, and I'm glad my circle is adapting. This is both smart and progressive. Thank you. We are trying doing whatever we can to still keep you engaged. Pauline is saying, if you don't have your own house, kindly think of how to have one. Very true. One of the biggest uh, one of the biggest expenses we have in living in the urban centers is rent. So if you can have that taken care of, then it puts you at a really good position. Okay. Let's see who else. Um, I have become wiser and been able to save more than before COVID. Thank you, Elizabeth. Caroline learned the importance of keeping aside some money for unexpected situations. Very true. Actually, most of us lost jobs, and we thank God we are adjusting. It's even forced us to be defaulters. Yeah, that's an unfortunate situation, Robert. And towards the end of this show, we are going to also be talking about that aspect of default. And Ryungu, bond with my family members became stronger. I'm glad I have a shoulder to lean on. Very true. Okay. Thank you all for sharing those uh, messages on how you're adjusting with the COVID situation, and we sympathize with all those who have either had to lose jobs or have lost loved ones in the process of, or rather during COVID. So we continue praying for things to improve as time goes by. Okay, Roy. Hello, Roy.
I don't know why it's not picking full screen.
But can you try moving the slides we see?
Yes, I'm moving it, but it seems
It's
it's not
not.
moving on your end.
Okay. Let me try sharing from my end then. Let
Please,
me
please.
try. Let me try sharing from this side, and we see whether it has makes a difference. I'll have to get. Um, okay. So just a moment. Yes, I have the.
Okay, let me try again. I've
Okay.
just did something.
Okay, go on. Go to slideshow. Yes, now you can see it. Try moving the slides. Yes, good. Please take it away.
Good, thank you so much, and sorry for that. You can still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Thank you. Yes, so as I was mentioning, I wished I could be able to ask people how COVID has treated them, but I have heard the responses they have given. The truth is that when the year started, very many of us were very positive that 2020 was the year, the double year, that everything that we have ever hoped for was going to happen. That was until we started hearing that something had happened in Wuhan, and then we thought it was a Wuhan affair. But then shortly thereafter, it became a Kenyan affair. And in the month of March, a truck arrived in this country, the truck we call the COVID truck, and it came loaded with a lot of uncertainties. Things started happening that people had never thought of. And it threw so many people off balance. Things that we used to talk about only in theory began to show themselves up. Because ordinarily we have been talking about the need to have an emergency kitty, the need to save, the need to just make sure that you're prepared for any eventualities. So COVID hit, and then uncertainties began to unfold. And many people were not prepared. That's just what is coming up clearly. So many of us were not prepared for what came to start happening. Both those of us that are in business and those that are employed, we started experiencing so many things. So this truck came loaded with job losses for some people. It is very true, and something that we can't run away from, that so many people have lost their jobs in different sectors of our economy. It also came with pay cuts for some people due to the effects it had on businesses. Some people's income got reduced. Those that are employed, some experienced pay cuts. Some people had to have pay cuts up to 50%. I've seen cases of 70%. Those that are in business experienced business collapse. And those that were a bit lucky experienced profit declines. Now, all these uncertainties found people unawares, and all of them come loaded with a lot of effects that are not very pleasant, because it carries effects that are both financial and effects that are non-financial. Ordinarily, this conversation would have two parts: the non-financial response to COVID-19 realities and the financial response to COVID-19 realities. But today our focus is on the financial response to COVID-19 realities. But on the non-financial front, we began to face the reality of stress. We began to face the reality that pressure from the demands of society, pressure from the demands of life was bigger. The demands were bigger than what we were able to supply to society. And then stress begins to show up. Anxiety also came up. People wondering how this will end. How will I survive This thing is here. I've lost my job. I have a pay cut. My business is not performing as it used to perform. So how do I move from here? So people were anxious. People were fearful. Fear was also part of the emotions that began to take a toll on people. People were wondering, so how will we survive? Is it possible that we will actually see the end to this? How will I feed my family? Is it possible that my family will survive this storm? Is it possible that with this reduced income, my people will be able to run, or I'll be able to run life the way I've been running life? There was also the aspect of anger. Some people got angry, especially those that lost their jobs. I got a couple of cases where some employees took it physical with their employers when they received the letters that their services were no longer required. Some employees took it physical when they received the letters to the effect that their salaries were going to be reduced, because this found them unprepared. And so, because of our difference in the levels of our emotional intelligence, some people got angry and their anger took a toll on them and even got them physical. I remember a clip that was making rounds on the internet of that guy in Mombasa whose pay had not been given to him for about 3 or so months. And the guy stormed the employer's office with a panga. I think those of us who saw that clip can relate. And these are just some of the non-financial repercussions of the uncertainties that COVID-19 brought with it. Sadly, we had also a number of cases degenerate into depression, and these cases continue to be registered. I've had conversations with medical doctors, and they give you stories that are saddening just because of the reality that dawned on us, the reality that came with that truck that was carrying all those uncertainties. So that is on the non-financial front. Now, financially, we were faced with the reality that we have reduced income. We still have our needs intact. So how are we going to meet our financial obligations? We are faced with the reality that we have lost income, but our needs are still intact. So how are we going to meet those obligations? Now, there are also those who have not been affected financially. They still have their jobs, they still have their salary intact. We also have those that still have their business intact and their profits are still intact, maybe growing. But that is not to say that they also have not felt the impact of the uncertainties of COVID-19. It is real that even those whose circumstances remained intact, even them, upon seeing what has happened to the people next to them, they also experienced a moment of reality check, that it is actually true that one day I could also lose my job. It is actually true that one day I could also face a pay cut. It is true that one day my business can also stop functioning the way it has been functioning. So all these realities came with all these thoughts, with all these realities that we needed to face. But then, upon facing these realities, we then get to the point where we have to make a choice. You know, when something bad hits people, we always will have two options. We have the option to react or to respond. Now, react is the first line of defense for so many people. It is what we do without thinking so much. It is what we do in defense of what has happened. React is what we do when we are still in denial mode. COVID has just hit. The reality is here that you no longer sell the things you used to sell, that your pay is likely to reduce, that your job is likely to be lost or has now been lost, or your income has now been reduced. So many people start by reacting. And reacting is where you find anger taking a toll on you. Reacting is where you begin to feel like your employer is unfair to you. How could your employer think of reducing your pay? How could your customers stop doing business with you? I have met people who, when COVID hit like this, their year was looking very forward and they had things set up for the year. They had itineraries well planned and their calendar was full, but immediately realities of COVID started showing up, their calendar became empty. So then we always will have the choice to either react, either feel angry, pick up anger, confront your boss, take a phone call, rather take your phone, call your client, make noise to them as to why they have stopped doing business with you. But you realize the effect of reacting is largely negative. Reacting causes a lot of trouble more than solving the situation. Because if you picked up anger and confronted your boss just because they have suggested a pay cut, chances are very high that they will not like it having you around. So you could now lose your job entirely. If it's a business, and just because your client has told you that they are not going to continue with the business deal as you had discussed before, and then you go shouting at them, chances are high that even when their situation normalizes, they may not do business with you. So react is negative, but then we have a positive choice to respond. Now, respond is when we take a moment to think through what has happened and to begin to understand this reality is not just for me alone. You know, when I speak about or teach about the non-financial response, today we are talking about the financial response. But when I talk about the non-financial response, I like saying that when you make the choice to respond, you are allowing yourself to flex. Because my understanding is that COVID is a test to our flexibility. Those that will remain rigid, those that will keep doing things the way they did before COVID, then they will remain where they were or even go downwards. Because when change happens, only those that are flexible enough to change fast enough begin to adapt to the new situations and begin to flow with it. So COVID is here to test our flexibility. So I'm inviting all of us then to begin to embrace responding to situations instead of reacting to them. If you had a sick person and you took them to hospital, and the day you go to visit, the doctor tells you that your patient is reacting to medication, you get worried. But if the doctor tells you that your patient is responding to medication, you have hope because it tells you that your patient is beginning to improve. So today, I want to begin by inviting us to respond to the COVID-19 realities. And I'll just be sharing with us a few simple and practical ways that we can adjust ourselves so that then we begin to respond to what COVID has brought to us. So that then we don't just fold our hands and keep complaining and talking about how COVID has affected us when we are not doing anything to lessen the impact of COVID-19 or to avoid certain negative aspects of it from befalling us. So we begin our conversation by looking at these financial responses. But before I begin to give us the tips that we can embrace from our households, it is important that I share with us what I call the realities of money. I have taken time to look at how we relate with money, and I developed 7 realities of money, 7 truths of money that we may not change. But once we get to embrace them, once we get to acknowledge them, then they have a power of altering the way we relate with money. So I have made these realities a mandatory part of every conversation I have in money management, because I have just realized how they begin to shape the way we think about money. So quickly, let us look at the 7 realities of money. And the first reality of money, and these are very simple realities, is that money is needed by all. That is simple truth, that we all need money. You could wonder why I would include something as basic as this in the list of realities of money. And this is the reason. In my interaction with people, I keep meeting people whose words, whose conversation about money negates the fact that they need money. I have met people, for instance, who will be telling me that money is not everything. You know, we can do without money. Of course, money is not everything. We also have chairs and water and other things. But the truth is that the modern life that we live today is powered by money, and we all need money. When I'm having conversations with men in something I call Triple M, Men Managing Money, I like saying that many years ago, provision used to mean that men in many societies would be going to the forest to hunt, to gather, and they would come home carrying animals they have killed, carrying roots, carrying fruits, carrying leaves, and that would mean that they have provided for their families. And when I say men here, I'm not excluding women, because we also have a lot of cases where women are working day and night to provide for their families. Today, provision has changed from bringing roots and fruits home. Provision is now defined by money. And that is why many of us wake up every day with thoughts of money in our minds. So money is needed by all. That means then that we need to change the way we speak about it. We need to change our attitude towards it. You cannot be needing money, but the other side of your mouth is saying that money is not everything. After all, I think I can do without it. When you know that you need it, then after you are done saying you can do without it, I find you on your knees trying to tell God to give you some money. I think we confuse God at some point. So the truth is that we all need money, and we need to align our vocabulary to that particular reality. The second reality is that money is powerful. And that is just simple. Money has a lot of power. Money dictates what gets to happen around us. Money gives us options. Money allows us to say either this or the other. If you do not have money, then you tend to take what you can afford. You don't have the option of saying, I should consider this or the other. So money gives us power. And I've met people say a lot of words to describe how powerful money is. You've heard people say, pesa ni sabuni ya roho. I don't know how much soap we need so that our roho can be as clean and as white as snow, but you have heard people say, pesa ni sabuni ya roho. I've heard people say that pesa huvunja milima. That is just to connote the power of money. In another training, I remember someone who told me, Mwalimu, if I had money today, I can actually just beat you right now and pay you. I don't know which statements you've heard where you come from with regard to how powerful money is, but the truth is that money is powerful. So why is it important that I mention this here? It is because once you acknowledge the power of money, then it is important that you begin to be keen in deciding what your money will do, so that you want to retain as much of this power as possible for as long as possible. So that when your money comes, when you get paid, when you make your profit, you are keen in deciding, making choices that allows you to stay with your money for as long as possible, so that you can retain part of this power for as long as possible. The third reality of money is that money is innocent. I know so many people blame money for a lot of things that happen around them. I know so many people excuse their misdeeds with money. I'm sure you've heard people say, when he had money, rather when he got money, he changed. When she got money, she changed. Now here is the reality. Money never changes nobody. Money only reveals people. Money is a revelatory agent, not a changing agent. Money helps us to know people better. If it is true that money changes people to be bad, why is it that we still have people who have a lot of money and they have not become bad? So it's not about the money, it's about who we are, the choices that we choose to make. So we should stop blaming our bad choices on money. Because when we say that money is what is going to change us, when we excuse our bad behavior on money, then we don't need to have money. You see, if money had a voice of its own, it would say a lot of things. It would refuse a lot of things. But it is you and I who determine what our money will do. So whether our money will look innocent or guilty, it is because of the choices that you and I have made. So it is you and I who are guilty, but money is innocent. You see, the same 1,000 shilling note will be in church tomorrow as offering. But the same 1,000 shilling note will find itself in the pockets of those bad guys at Dusit at lunchtime as they wait to execute their attack. If money had a voice of its own, it would say, no, yesterday I was in church, I cannot be used to pay for this lunch when I know that these people that are holding me are planning to make an attack. So money is innocent. The fourth reality of money is that money is never small. Now this one needs to sink. In a classroom setting, I usually say this one we need to narrate, we need to say it together. And I want to urge us, wherever we are at home, do not unmute, but I want us to say this together. At the count of 3, let us say together that money is never small. 3, 2, 1, let us go. Money is never small. Now, this is where I get fighting so many people. You know, the average human being believes that their money is the smallest ever. You've had people complain about their salaries. Aka kamshahara ketu, aka kapesa ketu. The moment you put it in your mind that your money is small, the truth is that that money will never be able to take care of you, because you have already fixed your mind that your money is not small, rather is not enough, it is small. That means your mind then begins to make choices that make sure that that money continues to look small. You see, what you call small is so huge for someone else. There is someone else, excuse me, who will be spending 5,000 shillings on lunch alone today. But in this same country, there is another person who works for 30 days to earn the same 5,000 bob. To the lunch guy, the 5,000 shillings is little money, looks like small money. But if the two of them met, and this other one is saying how he only spent 5,000 on lunch, this other guy would be looking at him. Boss, you mean you spend my entire salary of 30 days on lunch alone? So it's not about the money. It is the choices that we want to make with the money that we have. Let me give you a true story that I have given in many places, and I like teaching by examples, so I'll be sharing a good number of them. I met a guy who, this story has really inspired me and has also continued to inspire very many people in many places I've been. I met a guy in an investment group, a chama, if you want to call it, where I had been invited to share on something. And this guy, it appeared to me later that he was actually earning a salary of 2,000 shillings per month. Let that sink. You know, when I talk about this, some people think I wanted to say per hour or per day. Per month, I am sure so many of us cannot take up a job where we are being paid 2,000 shillings per month. I'm not talking about a story of the 70s where our parents were earning 343 shillings and they looked like millionaires. I'm talking about things of the 2000s. So this is not a story that happened many years ago. It's a story that just happened the other day. 2,000 shillings per month. Okay, that is not the story. The story is this. When I met this guy, he was planning to travel to a sub-country to construct his house. You may not understand the power of him going to construct his house until I reveal to you that I have been in places, I have had the chance to share with people who are nearing retirement, with people who have already retired. And I've spoken to people who have 1 year to retire, 2 years to retire in preparation for retirement. And the testimonies I get to hear, the confessions I get to hear of people who have worked for over 30 years, and I'm sure you have seen them, who get to retire when they do not even have a grass-thatched house, yet they have been earning multiples of 2,000s every other month. It is not about how much, it's about the choices. Now, this story caught my attention, and I really wanted to understand how would you be able to construct a house earning 2,000 shillings per month without any side hustle that we would think he has a bigger side hustle. And for those of us who are thinking that he did not have responsibilities, shock on you. This guy had a wife and children up country. The story was so inspiring that I have actually traveled to see the house. The house may not be permanent. The house is semi-permanent, but in the standards of my friend, the guy is so at peace. The guy is so much happy because he was able to do what many people have not been able to do, earning so much money than the 2,000 was earning. Just in case you're wondering how he was making it to make the house with 2,000, because that is the question I kept asking him, and he gave me the story. But the way he started the story is what was inspiring. This is how he began. He told me, the day I got this job, I accepted that if there is anything I have to do while I'm still working here, I will have to do it with the money that I get here. So I stopped living other people's lives and began to plan my own life. The tragedy for so many of us is that we are not living our lives. We are living for others. We are living for others to see. We are living conscious of what others will say. What will they say if they see me living this way? So what my friend was doing is every end month, he was a gardener and he had been accommodated at the employers. So what he used to do is that every end month when he receives his 2,000 shillings, he sends to his people not more than 500 shillings. Then he does his basic shopping, not more than 500 shillings. He thanked God that he had been housed at the employer. So he was not paying electricity, he was not paying water, he was not paying rent. But that is still little money in the eyes of so many of us, even with all that provided. Now, he also told me that his employer is fond of traveling quite a lot. And there are times when he is told to go and throw food items that have not expired, that are not leftovers that cannot be eaten. So what he does is he takes them, he checks. Maybe the employer is traveling and he knows that whatever he has bought might expire before he comes back. Or he has just used a little bit of it and he feels the rest needs to be thrown away. Then, so the guy looks at them and realizes this can still be used. So he retains what can be used for himself. He throws what cannot be used. Of course, preserving his dignity at that particular point. Then the remaining 1,000, he faithfully gives it to the chama. He joined the chama with his eyes focused on a goal. He knew that if he retained the money by himself, he would face the challenge of wanting to spend the money. So he gives the money to the chama every month. Then they would do table banking, lend the money to each other, and then at the end of the year, they get to close the account and share the money. So when I was speaking to that particular group, there were so many people who were defaulting their monthly payments, but my friend was 100% up to date as at the time of our conversation. It is because he was focused on his goal. People were wondering that his record was clean in contribution. Actually, people thought he was earning more than them. People who were earning tens of times more than him were lagging behind in their monthly contribution, while he was always the first to make his contribution. Then December, because we met around the time they were about to close the account, he takes his money plus his interest on the money and goes and buys iron sheets and other things. The following year, he begins afresh. At the end of the year, he goes home now to finish the construction. The house is there. It is a four-roomed house that I have seen. Money is never small. I wish I would share many examples on that, but let's proceed. The second reality of money is that the next reality of money is that money is finite. This means that money gets depleted as we use. Money, if you had 1,000 shillings on your table and you take out 10 shillings to buy airtime, it stops being 1,000. Even if you call it 1,000, it is not 1,000. So money reduces as we spend it. The reason this is important to internalize is because so many of us, when we get paid, we spend our money as if someone is adding us money. We spend our money as if we are being given an incentive to spend. You have seen people when it is payday or when they have struck a business deal, That is the time they want to spend like someone is rewarding them for spending. We acquire artificial wings. We want to come back home almost flying. We must remember always that as we spend this money, it is not remaining the same. It is coming down. Now, when you acknowledge this reality, then you want to be very purposeful in where your money will go, in what your money will do, instead of just spending it as it comes. Very many people, 3 or 4 down the line, days down the line, after they have received their income, their money gets finished. And that is the time they take pen and paper and they're trying to remember, how did I spend this money? I had 1,000, I took so and so, we bought a packet of unga, we bought this and this. Then you can't remember everything, but the money is gone. But that is not interesting. I like the way we justify. After realizing we can't remember how we spent the money, but the money is gone, then we scratch our head and eventually we say, at least sikutumia vibaya. But the money is not there. Hukutumia vibaya, you still have 27 days looking at you before you get the next income. And you're telling yourself, hukutumia vibaya. I don't know what use is vibaya, but as long as you have 27 days or whatever number of days looking at you before your next pay, and you don't have the money, it means you did not plan yourself well. We have to remember that money is finite. The second last reality of money is that money is attracted, not chased after. Now, this one is also another interesting one because many of us wake up in the morning and we are chasing after money. You may have realized that, long ago we used to joke and say that while we were wearing trousers, money was wearing shorts. So it was running faster than us. Then I think at some point human beings started wearing shorts. You must have realized by now that money has now acquired wings. When you run towards it, it seems to fly away. Money is attracted. That is where the secret is. So how do you attract money? You attract money by adding value to society. Whether you are employed or in business, you must ask yourself, what value am I adding where I am? Those that are employed might wonder, my work is routine. I have a clear job description. I get to the office and I have to do this and this. Where do I add value? Now, everyone has chance to add value. Let me make this statement that might bother you. For those of us that are employed, it is true that in every workplace, there are people, if a decision is to be made, that those people need to cease being employees, it will be very easy for the organization. It will be like good riddance. But there are people, if there is a suggestion for them to go home, the board or whoever is in the leadership will need to go back to the boardroom and ask themselves, how shall we survive without so and so? So my question to you and my challenge to you is, are you this employee who can be so easily done away with? Or are you this employee who can send the organization to the drawing board to ask themselves how they will survive in your absence? What will your employer miss from you if you left the organization? That is not what you do every day. Everyone else can do it. In your absence, the organization will still move. But is there something else that you add there? Maybe you're thinking that I'm talking about people who are in senior positions. Let me give you an example. One day, while speaking in a manufacturing company, I got a chance to speak to machine operators. Machine operators are people who press buttons, and a machine will respond the same way if a particular button is pressed, whether it is pressed by a 9-year-old or it's pressed by an 80-year-old, whether it's pressed by an educated person or someone who's not educated. So it's not about how smart you are in pressing the machine. Now, I gave them the same example I've told you, that in this company, if business goes down and the company wants to sack some of you, it is possible that some of you will be so easy to be done away with, but it is possible that there could be someone amongst you who the company will go back to the drawing board to ask themselves how they will survive without that person. I didn't finish my example before they unanimously shouted, Julius. So I got asking myself, what is it about this Julius? Who is this Julius? So I got to meet Julius. I also got to understand why Julius. Julius is a machine operator. Everyone said that where Julius works, People fight to be in the same shift with him because Julius is so full of positive energy. Julius does his work smiling, singing, whistling. Julius is this person who is ready to help everyone. Julius will leave his machine running and help a friend or a colleague whose machine has an issue. Julius is always ready to help, both in work-related issues and even other issues that are outside work, until management have realized that actually the contribution of Julius in that company is so huge that it cannot be ignored. You know what has happened? Last time I checked, Julius had been promoted to head the production unit. It is not about Julius's education. It is about the value that Julius was adding where he was working, pressing the same buttons that everyone else was pressing. But everyone else is able to recognize that Julius, if all of us were to be sacked, Julius' letter will come the last. I challenge you today, what value do you add where you are? And those that are in business, business is not just about selling things and making profit. If you started a business with your eyes fixed on profit, you must today have realized that business obeys the law of process. And sometimes when it takes you through that process, if you are not prepared, if your eyes were fixed on making a lot of money, then you will very easily give up. Business begins to go the way of people who are adding something beyond what they're just selling. I'm sure if you go to a shop whose shopkeeper is looking gloomy every day, you will definitely want to go to a shop whose shopkeeper is smiling every day. It's a world of adding value. The last reality of money is that money is everyone's right. And this one we must also internalize. I have met people who keep saying that pesa iko na wenyewe. You know, the moment you say pesa ina wenyewe, you have already canceled everything that would happen to you that would help bring money and resources to you, because you have surrendered and said, I am not a money person. My question to you is, why don't you become one of the wenyewes? Why don't someone else describe you as one of the wenyewes? The truth is that money is everyone's right. Our maker, upon creating us, he gave us a field that was almost level, was actually level. In his eyes, we are all equal. He gave us the same promises. Our work is to stand on those promises, claim them, and run with them. So let us stop surrendering and saying that pesa iko na wenyewe. Let us begin to learn about money, begin to learn the secrets of those who seem to be the wenyewes. Then we can begin to make ourselves part of the wenyewes. So I will stop there for the realities of money, and now allow me to swing into the tips that will help us adjust and begin to respond to the realities of COVID-19. And I will try to share as many as possible as time will allow. The first thing that you should do or you should have done, but it's also important that I remind us that it is never too late to begin doing the right thing. So when you get hit by the financial realities of COVID-19, the first thing that you need to do is to establish your current position. It is very important to check where you are standing. Where are you today? And you look at your current position with regard to, number one, your income. Remind yourself, what is my income? Has it reduced? Have I faced a pay cut? Has it stopped? Is it still the same? So remind yourself how your income looks like. Answer yourself the question, what are my income sources? Then the second position that you must also come to terms with is your expenditure. How do I spend my money? Where has my money been going? You know, this is the toughest question for many people. In the world of money, the biggest challenge is not about making money. So many people try to make money, but the biggest challenge is the question of where does your money go? And I'm in essence also asking you, where does your money go? Very many people ask themselves where the money went after the money has already gone. But we need to elevate ourselves to a level where we have the power to control where the money will go, so that then we can be able later on to answer the question, where does your money go? So upon facing realities of COVID-19, it's important that you pause for a moment and ask yourself, what are my expenses? What do I spend my money on a typical month? So do a list of all the items you spend your money on. At that time, you're beginning to see a comparison between your current income and how you've been spending your money. Now, for those who may not know how they spend their money, I also welcome you to a challenge of tracking your expenses, but I'll be saying something about that in the next few slides. Then your other position that you must also be true to is your debt position. Now, I know many people don't like looking at their debt position. We like ignoring the debt position. And when I teach about debt management, one of the things I teach in the steps that I call the ADSA 4-step approach to debt management, the D in that process is disclosure. And this is where I challenge people to sit down and do a list of everyone they owe, including airtime advance, because that is part of your debt. So when you face realities of COVID-19 and you have been in debt before COVID-19 realities came, you cannot ignore the reality of debt because it is with you. So as you check your income, as you check your expenditure, it's also important that you also bring yourself to speed with your debt position. Who do you owe? How much have you been paying monthly? With the current position of your income, are you able to continue paying your debt the way you have done before? Or is it going to affect the way you've been paying your debt? So you must have these figures with you because they will determine how you behave going forward. If you ignore these numbers, sometimes I have met people who say they don't like looking at money numbers, but interestingly, they like looking at money itself. You cannot afford to hate numbers if you love to see money, because money itself has numbers written on it. So we must at least love to see the numbers that are surrounding us. Income numbers are our numbers. Expenditure numbers are our numbers. It is us who spend. Debt numbers are our numbers. So establish your current position. Then after that, then we begin moving. The second thing that you will do is that you need to draw a new budget because, and especially if your situation has changed, your income situation has changed, then you will need to change your budget. And even if it has not changed, and you never thought that we would get to a point where people would lose their jobs, that you'll get to a point where people would get reduced income, that reality has now dawned on you. You will also need to sit down and relook at the way you have been spending your money. So as you draw your new budget, it's important that you will list your necessities separate from your luxuries. So separate as you are sitting down and planning on how you will use this reduced income of yours or this income of yours. Do a separate list of how, or rather, of the items that you spend on that are necessary and those that you spend on that are not necessary. The reason for doing this is that after you have listed your necessities, you are able to compare them first with your income now and see whether your current income is able to meet your necessities. If not, then I advise that you switch to another budget that we call the bare bones budget. The bare bones budget is a survivalist budget, is where you have seen the realities of COVID-19. Your income has reduced. Your income may not support the necessities that you've been spending on the way you have been doing before. So now you tell yourself, I need to survive this phase because we are in a phase of survival. When COVID realities get to cool down, when the implications of COVID get to vanish, we should see you alive. So we are trying to adjust so that then we can survive this particular trying phase. So the bare bones budget is now the bare minimum budget, where you sit down and ask yourself, like my friend of 2,000 shillings per month said, what do I need? How much unga do I need? How much sugar do I need? How much food do I need to survive? So that would be a survivalist budget. If you are lucky to still have your income intact, after listing down all those items, necessities and non-necessities, but you now know that there is this reality that has faced other people, then you want to begin being keen and saying that I want to be conscious and cautious as I choose my luxuries, as I choose how I spend my money. It is also important that you also exclude your irregular income. If you are this person who earns, apart from your basic salary, you also earn allowances that may not be regular, that may come this month and not come the other month, or the amounts keep fluctuating, or you are this person who keeps getting paid on commission basis only. That means today you have a lot of money, tomorrow you don't have a lot of money, or apart from your normal salary, you have other incomes that are not regular. As much as possible, as you're planning, try to exclude irregular items so that in case they come, then you will feel that you have more money with you, money that you can set aside in preparation for surviving many days tomorrow, or money that can now help you to begin doing other things that will make your life a bit easier as you begin to battle with the realities of COVID-19. So the danger of trying to budget using irregular income is that sometimes it might give you a false picture. Just because the other month you made a lot of money, you may draw a budget that is reflecting your readiness to spend a lot of money. Then when end month comes, you receive money that is half of what you got last month. That might be dangerous for you. So after you have done that, it is also important that you may need to consider cutting back on discretionary spending. Discretionary spending is spending on items that are not necessary, that are not necessities, is spending on items where you have a say in determining whether you should spend there or not, or on what quantities you need to spend there. You see, spending on items like rent, for example, your choice spectrum is limited to deciding the house you want to live in. But after you have decided and you know the rent amount is this, every other month you don't have a lot of power in saying, this month I want to cut back on my rent from paying 10,000 to paying 4,000. I doubt your landlord will want to hear things like those. But it is important that if you have items that you can consider as discretionary, items that are non-essential, then you need to start thinking of how you can reduce your spending on them, at least in this period where we are battling the effects of COVID-19. And part of what you can do is to reduce the percentage or the frequency of spending on certain items. I meet people who have decided that every month they must spend 10% on clothing, for example. You know, this might sound funny, but I meet all sorts of people. I actually have sat with people who tell me they have to buy clothes every month because that's just how they believe life should be run. Now, when you're faced and you're such kind of person and you're now faced with the realities of COVID-19, you may need to reduce the percentage that you spend on certain items, as long as those items are discretionary, or the frequency of doing certain items or certain things. If you are this person who would go out with your friends every weekend, the reality has happened, your income has reduced, or you now are clear that one day your income could reduce, you may need to sit down and say, instead of going out every weekend, I could go out 2 times a month. I could go out once a month. So it's just a matter of making a choice that will help you be able to comfortably survive this trying moment. You may also need to try alternatives. It is likely and possible that you have been spending money on alternatives, or rather on things that have been expensive. Maybe someone sold to you an expensive solution and you've never for a moment considered alternatives that could actually give you the same thing and at a reduced rate. So it is high time today that you begin to look at alternatives. And I'm trying to talk about things like TV. We have so many people who have subscribed to pay TV options, and they are paying for packages that they rarely use. There are people who have subscribed for the heaviest package, but they rarely even have time to sit down and watch TV. They are rarely at home, or even if they're at home, they are doing other things. If you sit down and evaluate how much time you spend on TV or what channels you spend watching on TV, you might realize that you could actually do better even with the lowest package. So it is high time that you consider alternatives. I'm talking about internet. I have met people who have subscribed to internet of speeds that are high enough to run a company with 100 employees plus, but they are alone at home, or they are only a family of a few people. The truth is they could actually survive, because looking at the way they spend on internet, they could actually survive on the lowest package without even realizing the difference. But because someone sold to them the highest package, they bought it and they have been comfortable with it. So with the realities that we now have, it is high time we do an audit into how much internet we use. Is it possible that we are paying for internet that we don't use? Because what you don't use gets wasted. I'm looking at transport. How have you been moving yourself from point A to point B? Have you been driving? Have you gotten to a point where you now realize that driving to certain places is becoming expensive? Is it possible that you can consider another option? Is it possible that you've been driving and parking your car in town only for it to wait for you at the end of the day for you to transport yourself back home? Is it possible that you've been donating or rather giving away the parking money when you actually can do without it? Is it possible that you've been picking taxi every day to work when you could actually comfortably consider another alternative? I'm simply saying, try to see whether you have alternatives to your discretionary spending. Now, it is not just the discretionary spending that can help you save a few coins. You can also cut back on your necessities. It is possible that we all know food is a necessity, for instance, but it's also possible that within the necessity called food, we also have food items that are luxurious, food items that we may need to pause a bit or reduce the amount of spending that we give it, just because we need to survive the phase that we are facing today. It is possible that we may need to reduce our bills. There are things that we do unconscious just because we have the money to pay those bills. Is it possible that we can begin to also find other alternatives that can help us reduce what we spend on certain items? Bills like our electricity bill. Maybe we've been leaving lights on, leaving things on as we go to work without a care, just because we've been able to pay the bill. Now it is time for us to be cautious. It is time for us to be deliberate and say, I want to reduce my electricity bill from what it has been to something else. In the world of money, every shilling spared goes a long way. So do not look at it and say, this one is only saving me 100 bob per month. That's not a lot of money. But when you look at it, when you annualize it, you realize that is 1,200. When you look at a different thing, that becomes a lot of money that can also help you do something else or can reduce your pressure, especially at a time like this. Look at your cooking energy. What have you been using to cook? I'm not saying that you begin to look for firewood and begin to put smoke in your landlord's house or your beautiful house. I am trying to say that it is time to also audit what energy have you been using? Is it the best energy around? Is it energy that is the most cost effective that you have around? So it is time for you to check and see whether you can reduce something. Look at your water. Maybe you've been leaving water running up and down every other place. It is time to also just check and see whether there is something you can do. Even if that water bill will reduce by 100 shillings, it goes a long way. Telephone, this is a big one. So many people use a lot of money on telephone unconsciously. You will ask them, they will not tell you how much they use on phone. But when they track how they spend their money, they discover they're actually using 6,000 on airtime. They're using quite a lot of money on airtime. Today is the time to ask yourself, is my telephone option the best option? Is it possible that I can have another package that can give me the same service or even better at a lower cost? Is it possible that I can consider joining postpaid options? You know, people look at postpaid options and think that they are options for the high and mighty. It will shock you when you realize how much we pay on telephone compared to you who is loading scratch card of 100 shillings every other day. Sometimes you will load 100 shillings every other day. When you compare with what I will spend on postpaid, you begin to realize, hey, then there is trouble. Some of you do not even know that we have bundles rather packages that are bundled up. Things like all-in-one that Safaricom is giving and other options that other service providers are giving. Oftentimes I take time to just skim through what every service provider is giving. And every time I find offers that if only people took a second to discover what is being offered, then there is a lot of money that we can begin to save from the bills that we have. You may also need to change where and how you shop. Yes, there are people, there's a way you've been spending money before COVID realities happened, and you are comfortable with it because maybe it did not send alarms to you. But now you have seen the alarm bells. You may need to look at the way you shop. There are people I meet who live along Thika Road, but they believe that the best place for them to shop is at the Junction Mall on Gong Road. So they don't imagine that they're spending on fuel going to the junction to shop. There are people who will see an offer in a supermarket that is kilometers away, but the offer is only saving them 10 shillings, but they would rather take a matatu, spend 100 shillings to go and take advantage of that offer. I would have called it a bigger name, but let me not call it a bigger name. But it's a certain class of wisdom to do that. So you may need to audit how you've been shopping. It is time that you may need to start considering options like shopping in bulk if it carries incentives with it, if it is giving you discounts. It is possible that now you need to start comparing prices. It is possible that now you need to start going for shopping with a list of what you need to go and shop. If you look at everyone that seems to be sober financially, they do not spend their money blindly. They spend their money in a controlled manner. So you need to look at the way you shop, ask yourself whether there are certain patterns that you need to adopt and whether there are certain new things that you can begin to do that can also help you. Then you also do not need to shortchange your savings and or your pension, kitty. Before COVID happened, it could be possible that you were saving some money. The realities of COVID have happened. And if you have faced a pay cut, there will always be that temptation to do away with savings. There will always be the temptation, and I've met this in very many circles, where people begin to be tempted to want to withdraw from the circle and get their savings to survive this particular phase without even thinking of how far those savings will help you to survive the realities of COVID-19. It depends with the level where you are in terms of how you've been hit by these realities of COVID-19. But as much as it is possible, do not shortchange the agenda of savings. As much as it is possible, continue saving. It works better if you save using percentages, because with percentages, when your income reduces, your percentage is intact. It is only the money reflecting the percentage that will reduce, but you still are alive to the fact that you need to continue saving. Now, pension is also another area that many people get tempted to liquidate. I have met people who actually my inbox is full of messages of people who keep asking, is it good time for me to liquidate my pension? But the question I usually ask in return is, why did you start saving in that pension kitty? You are looking at your retirement. You are looking at a bigger thing when you stop working. Now you have not stopped working. You are still working. So what makes you think that if you liquidate your pension account, you will be able to bounce back and replenish that account? For many people, they are breaking into the account to spend, not that they're investing the money. And even those who try to invest the money, many of them have burnt their fingers. So as much as it is possible, avoid the temptation to stop saving, to break into your savings account, or to break into your pension account. Look at the bigger picture. If you can adjust a few things and survive the realities successfully, please try to be blind to the idea of breaking into those important accounts. It's also important that you need to anticipate trouble. Trouble will not stop coming your way just because you're facing a rough time with COVID. Trouble will not stop coming your way. People will not stop falling sick just because your pay has been reduced. People will not stop falling sick just because your business has collapsed or your profit has reduced. So it's always important to anticipate trouble at every time and begin to put measures in place that will reduce the impact of trouble when trouble knocks, or to avoid certain troubles. Because trouble makes us equal. In life, you are either in trouble, you have just walked out of trouble, or you are headed for trouble. So it's important to ask yourself, with this reduced pay, how do I safeguard myself? Make sure that basic things like your NSSF contribution is up to date. If you have been paying for yourself, the 500 per month, for instance, when your income has reduced, please do not fall into the temptation of stopping to update your NHIF account. You will be so shocked that sometimes when things are thick, that is when trouble comes loaded with all its relatives and cousins and everyone around it. So always anticipate trouble and try to put measures in place. You may not understand the importance of NHIF today, maybe because you have another cover, but I have also had the chance to interact with people who rely on NHIF, and they give you stories of what it has done for them. And you begin to see that one day, if you're pushed to that corner, NHIF could be your saving. Just giving you an example of how you can anticipate trouble and begin to safeguard yourself from the impact of that trouble. Number 6, which I've also mentioned before, is that you need to continue tracking your expenditure. That will help you know where your money goes. That will also help you in your budgeting process, because budgeting is a process, a continuous process. Budgeting is not a one-day affair. For those of us that are on social media, I want to invite you to visit my YouTube account, Roy Okonji. There is a live that I did last Wednesday, and I was talking about the budgeting process simplified, how you can begin to embrace a budgeting culture and make it doable. I was trying to demystify what has made budgeting a culture that many people have avoided. So at your free time, visit Roy Okonji on YouTube. Please subscribe. There are so many videos there, about 80 something of them, talking about money matters, debt management matters, and many other life skills that might be beneficial to you. But I'm inviting you at this point on the item of budgeting. You will find tips there that can also go a long way in improving your budgeting life. But most importantly, as you budget, it's not enough to have a budget statement for you to write down and say, when my money comes, I want to spend it this way. It goes beyond saying that into the actualization of it, because the biggest test is when the money is in your hands. Many people write beautiful budget statements, but when money lands on their hands, they forget what they had planned and they use the money the way they've been using before. So keep tracking your expenditure. It will reveal to you the thieves that are stealing your money. It will show you the loopholes in your financial system. Then you can be able now to address them, because you will know where your money has been going. Now, especially in this time where we are facing the realities of COVID, when you keep tracking your expenditure, you are able to remind yourself whether you are spending in accordance to your new budget, or you're beginning to veer off the road and begin spending the way you were spending before, because it is not business as usual. Number 7 is that you also have to remember to give attention to your debt situation. Even if your income has reduced, this is not the time for you to ignore that you are in debt. Whether you are servicing your debt well, and now you have reached a point where you cannot continue servicing your debt the way you were doing before, this is not the time to start avoiding your lenders. This is not the time to start running away. This is the time to sit down and face the reality that you are in debt, and your debt need to be serviced. So even if your income has reduced, you still have something you can do. You can approach your lender, you can speak with them, you can renegotiate, you can make them understand what is happening with you. In my latest book, Breaking Free from the Trap of Debt, which I will share, I think, at the end of this, I have shared so many options that you can begin to consider when you are trying to battle your way out of the bondage of bad debt or any debt, so that you bring its management level to a point of control. So address your debt, because if you don't, there are many people who will begin their journey into the trap of debt courtesy of the COVID-19 realities, just because they found themselves in a tight spot and they ignored their debt. So they are now going into arrears. Pressure is already mounting from their lenders. And that means then a lot of the dangers of the trap of debt begin to follow them. When you are trapped in debt, everything about your life gets affected. Everything from your health, your relationships, your career, and your financial life. Everything can be brought to a standstill with the trap of debt. When you're trapped in debt, your mental health is affected. You are absent-minded. You're processing answers. People are knocking at your door. People are calling you relentlessly. So you are not stable, even mentally. You could lose it. You could do things that are just hilarious when you're trapped in debt. Those of you who have followed my story, you just know how much I have battled with this. Just for those of us who might be new with what I do, I am very passionate when it comes to talking about the conversation of debt, because it has rained on me heavily before. I am an award winner, perhaps the only one this side of the world. I hold a very expensive trophy that I was given by one of my Shylocks back in the day for being the most trustworthy borrower and for continued business. I want you to pause and internalize that. For us to get to a point where a Shylock chooses to award you expensively, I leave you to imagine how much business I had given them. So when I look back, I thank God for the opportunity to go through what I went through, because in hindsight, I realized I was learning about what I'm sharing these days. So I do not share a lot of theory, and I'm sure, and at the end of this, I pray you will agree with me that the tips I'm giving here are tips that can be done by very many of us. So avoid getting trapped in debt, because when your mind gets affected, you might begin to behave in a very bad way. So reach out to your lenders. I've said, talk to them, explain to them, renegotiate with them the terms of your debt. But before you renegotiate, make sure you know what you want to achieve. Do not just call your lender and you don't know what you want to achieve. You could renegotiate the repayment amount. Maybe your income has reduced. You cannot continue paying 10,000, but you can pay 5,000. Instead of running away, reach out to your lender, talk to them, and renegotiate from 10 to 5. When the storm is over, then you can upgrade back to what you have been paying before. You can also consider consolidating. I'm just sharing a few tips on how you can approach your debt situation. But as I mentioned, I have listed so many of them in that particular book. Consolidation is where, instead of having so many lenders, you look for the cheapest of them, borrow the amount equivalent to the outstanding balances that you have in different places, then begin to have one lender instead of so many of them. What you do here is that you reduce your pressure points, because every lender is a pressure point. So if you have borrowed from 10 people, it means you have 10 pressure points. If they wake up and begin to pour pressure on you, you will not have peace. But if you can consolidate and remain with one or two, then you have reduced your pressure points. Also, consolidation has the impact of bringing money back to your system. Because you borrowed different amounts and you've been paying over time, it is possible that your total repayment amount is big, maybe 30,000, maybe 20,000, because someone else you're giving them 7,000, another one 5, another one 12. But if you are to consolidate the remaining balances, maybe they will be equivalent to a loan that can be repaid at 15,000. So you will have some money coming back to your system, money that can now be used to do something else or to cushion you or to be saved. for the future. There's also what I call the gradual winning method. This is a method I use when doing coaching for people who have been trapped in cyclic borrowing tendencies. I run something that I call the debt clinic, where I sit with people one-on-one, just encouraging them, listening to them, because it's a journey I have traveled myself. It's a journey I understand. It's a journey I have done with so many other people. I am a former banker, and in my banking life, all those years I spent in different areas of credit. So I've had the chance to also appreciate how debt runs from different perspectives and how it gets to affect people. So if you are this person who keeps borrowing from your mobile phone apps, you know the apps are here today with us, and you keep borrowing every other month, or you are this person who, even at the circle point of view, I like telling many circles, if many of your members are those who come to borrow the short-term options only, then you need to get worried. If you are a perennial borrower of the short-term options, if your circle has an emergency option and you are always in emergencies every other month, then you need to be worried. But then you need to do something to begin weaning yourself off that dependence on borrowing. If you're this person who will sort your mobile debt now and then wait for 20 minutes and then you reapply again, and you do that every other month, then the gradual winning method can help you. This is a method where, because it is not easy for you to stop once, because your survival has also been intertwined with your borrowings. That means when your income comes, it must go into the apps first before you take it at the end of the tunnel to start spending it when it's already reduced. Then instead of us telling you to stop at once, you may suffer what other addicts suffer in terms of relapses. It may not work for you. So you may need to consider gradual winning. This is where if your limit in one of the options is 10,000, for example. So what you will do is, if you have borrowed 10, when you will pay 10, you give yourself a reduction limit. You tell yourself, I'll be reducing by 1,000, 1,000. So next time, even if they increase your limit, you don't borrow 10, or even if they've taken your limit to 12, you borrow 9. You pay 9, next time you borrow 8. What you're doing is your mind is getting conditioned to the fact that you are getting away from the dependence on that particular borrowing stream. Then eventually you will get to a point where you get to neutralize that particular debt, and then you begin to move forward. So that's just an option for cases that have gone a little bit out of hand. So when you take care of your mind so that you avoid behaving like this brother of mine here, I want you to imagine a case where you're trapped in debt to a point where your lender begins to control you by remote control. Then you can begin to do what my brother here is doing. Just an innocent soul trying to fix himself some meal. I don't know whether he's a bachelor or not. That is for you to imagine. But he's trying to fix himself a meal. Then one of the lenders call. Hey, I told you I will send the money tomorrow. That call makes you confused. See what he did. He ends up frying the phone instead of what he wanted to fry. This is what can happen to you when you are heavily trapped in debt and pressure is coming from every corner by the lenders that have given you money. So be cautious the way you handle your money. Be cautious the way you spend your money so that you can be able to take care of yourself and avoid unnecessary borrowing. Number 8, and I think I'll share 2 more, then I will stop there so that we can take in a couple of questions before we end our session. Do not lose focus on your long-term goals. Just because COVID happened, just because things look difficult today, don't be tempted to forget the long-term goals that you had. Keep your focus on them. When the year started, we had people who were saying at the end of this year, I dream to start constructing my house. I dream to have accumulated my emergency kit to this point. I dream to have done this and this and the other. Please do not kill those dreams just because COVID happened, just because we have had this phase where things seem not to be moving. Keep your eyes focused because the dust will settle. And once the dust settles, if you have removed your eyes from the goal, then you will also start from scratch. Keep your dream alive. Do not forget what you had purposed to achieve financially. Do not forget your goals. Do not remove your eyes on them, because eventually when the dust settles, you will be better off than someone who forgot about their goals. Short-term setbacks should not blur your vision. And then number 9, and the second last one, you need to go slow on high-risk investments. You know, when business starts running in an unusual manner, we also need to respond in a manner that reflects our understanding of what is happening. A time like this, where your income has been constrained, where every other deal seems to be constrained, you need to be very cautious. If you're still in a position to be able to do investments, you need to be very cautious in analyzing the risk of what you want to find yourself into. When we switch to survival mode, like what we have done in a season like this, it is also a season of being conservative when it comes to making investment choices, especially if your income streams have been affected largely. Because if you are this kind of person who will hear of an investment option today and you throw money there, you burn your fingers, but you're okay. Tomorrow you look for another source of money and you are willing to pour it somewhere else. At a time like this, it is very possible for people to lose capital. And a phase where we are today is a phase where we want to preserve as much capital as possible so that when the dust settles, then you can be able to move on. Unless you have accumulated money that you had focused to invest and you have seen an investment option, because this day we have options that have been hit by the same realities, but there are options that we know once the dust settles, they will peak in a big way. Then you only need to look at the risk aspect of them and move ahead. What I'm talking about here are those options that promise you a lot of returns, but carry heavy, heavy risks. This is the time to be cautious about them. This is also the time that you need to understand where you want to invest your money. If you are seeking to invest, this is not the time for someone to come and tell you that if you give us your money in 3 months' time, the money will have doubled. You need to be so cautious because there are also many scams that are clothed like investment opportunities. There is nothing as bad as being hit when you're already hit by the realities of COVID-19. And lastly, and very importantly, is that you need to think income. You need to think income. You have been relying on one stream of income, or the stream that you've relied on heavily has been affected by COVID-19. I think there has never been a better time to sell the message of people thinking about other sources of income than now. Begin to ask yourself, what else can you do to increase your income flow? Is there something else that you can do that is within reach that will also help you begin to get another coin coming into your basket? You know, when you have another coin coming, if one sector is affected, then you have something else to cushion you. When you have another coin coming, if you're battling with the trap of debt, it will help you in two ways. It helps you to avoid the temptation of backsliding, of continuing to borrow for consumption. It might also help you to speed up the process of paying your debts. So is it possible that you have a skill that can be monetized? I like the way so many people have monetized many skills that were dormant in them. I like the way many people have discovered that they could actually do some businesses When people switched into survival mode and asked themselves, what other thing can I do? I saw people converting their vehicles into shops. I saw people begin to sell groceries. I saw people begin to do things. Do you know there are people who will not go back to their workplace just because if they were on unpaid leave and they tried something and the thing accepted, today they have realized that they can actually do much better doing a different thing. So is it possible you can monetize a skill? Is it possible you can bake cakes and begin to sell them? Is it possible you can weave mats and begin to sell them? We are now in a phase where perhaps you are waiting for you to be recalled back to your workplace. How are you spending your money, your time? Is it possible that you can do something within that time that can also benefit you? Is it possible you can find some online jobs that you can do at your free time and they can begin to bring you additional income? What can you do to get another coin is what I'm telling you to think about today. And just before I sign out, because I'm speaking to SACCO members, sometimes I like making your life a bit uncomfortable because I want to say something touching on the way we handle our, what we call our dividends. You know, I've taken time to look at the way we, we spend our dividend money when the SACCOs pay as dividends. And sometimes I laugh at ourselves, at us. A lot of people, when dividends are paid, spend that money on things that are not essential. Many people use that money to pigia mwili pole, to thank themselves for being SACCO members. The truth is that you were surviving before that money came. I'm just throwing in a thought. What if you don't have to spend that money for spending's sake? What if you returned that money to boost your savings kitty so that next year you get a bigger dividend? What if you allowed your dividend money to enjoy the magic of compounding? Don't you think it will leave you at a better place instead of waiting for when the dividend will be paid for you to buy another shoe, for you to buy another bag? Food for thought. I said I wanted to make your life a bit uncomfortable. I've been privileged to put down this and many other thoughts in 6 books now. 5 of them are already published. One will be released in the next couple of weeks or so. The first book I wrote is called Relate Well, Live Well. It's a book about the importance of relating well with people wherever you are and how it can influence your success in different areas of your life. I've talked about your families, relationships at the workplace, relationships at a business level, and the social space. The second book I wrote is called Confronting Fear. You know that thing that holds you back. Every time you want to move forward, it reminds you that you are not well equipped, that if you try, you will fail. They will laugh at you, you will lose your money. And so you sit with your brilliant ideas until you see your neighbors doing well with the same ideas, and you keep saying that idea was my idea, but you're sitting on it. I've talked about how the environment can put fear on you, how parents put fear in their children without knowing, with all the good intentions. I've talked about the fear of failure, the fear of the unknown, and I've also suggested how you begin to confront your fears when they come to you. The third book that I have, that I wrote, is called You Can Do Better. This is the only promise that I have to humanity, that you can do better, that none of us is condemned to have a life that is stagnant. Your life tomorrow needs to look better than it is today and yesterday combined. And I believe that is why the SACCO invests in us having education days, because we believe that at the end of sessions like this, then you pick something that is likely to make your life better tomorrow than it is today. So the book just seeks to inspire you to embrace a life that is of a growth nature, that tomorrow needs to look better than today. I've shared simple tips here that people who are growing have embraced. Things like how to nurture positive attitude, things like running your own race without comparing yourself to others, the power of discipline, the power of humility, the power of going an extra mile, and so many things that would make your tomorrow better. The fourth book I wrote is called Debt is Good, Only If You Master It. There are people who only read the first part, debt is good, and they go borrowing and they will say, he said debt is good. But the second part is very important, only if you master it. Actually, that part is the title of this book. So I'm speaking to borrowers, just equipping you with skills of making sober borrowing decisions if you must borrow. What do you consider before you approach a lender, before you come to the circle to ask for the development loan or whatever type of loan that you will come for? What should you consider? I've talked about personal loans, those things you call top-ups. When can they kill you? When can they be beneficial? Salary advance, credit cards, Shylocks, and so many other things, just to equip you into becoming a better borrower if you must borrow. The fifth book is The Medicine Itself, Breaking Free from the Trap of Debt. I realized everywhere I go to speak about debt, many people are asking, so how do we move out of this? Yet it's a personalized journey. It is a journey that works best, especially when we sit one-on-one. So I decided to put down what I use, the approach I use at the one-on-one level, spread the spectrum and just give as many options as possible. I have described how the prison of debt looks like, just in case you are doubting whether you are trapped in debt or not. I've described what it can affect in your life, how it can eat into your health in detail, how it can eat into your careers in detail, how it can eat into your relationships and your financial life, how it can make you begin to look at the circle as your enemy instead of looking at the circle as a tool of empowerment, as an option that is coming to catalyze your development. I have described the new addiction in town, addiction to borrowing. Then how can we prevent that addiction? How can we treat that particular addiction? Then lastly now is the process of breaking free step by step. The sixth book, which is yet to be released, is called Managing My Money. And it is a book about the best practices in personal money management. And once it is released, we will announce as appropriate. If you do this and many things that we have shared, as I always say, you can do better. Thank you so much. May God bless you all. Let us keep talking. Thank you. And back to you.
Thank you very much, Roy. I think looking at the comments that are coming in, people really appreciate all the wisdom you've shared. Let me just quickly read through. I can see Jeff Nakasha is saying, awesome presentation, Roy. Boniface is saying, I like that, debt is good. Very great realities, makes all the sense. Insightful books, that is from Michael Kendagor. Callisto Cheng is saying, hi, Roy, the current, oh, actually, this is a question. We'll pick the questions right after this. And generally, people are just appreciating him to talk to us about all that you've just shared. So at this point, let me quickly bring up a few questions I've seen coming in from the members. And number one is a question from Pauline Kabugi. So this came in earlier on. Pauline is asking, can our SACCO assist me have a mortgage? Pauline, please talk to the office about Kanisa Holdings Limited. Jane Kavila is asking, when is the best time to liquidate pension? I think, Roy, you can take this. This is in relation to when you said that during a crisis, we should not shortchange our savings or our pension. So maybe you could have a go at this.
All right. I don't know whether we pick all of them or we say.
Okay. Let me read through all of them then. And then Jane has a second question. This is in relation to the high risk investment. So she's asking, could you highlight a few of the current high risk investments?
Okay.
And then the other one is from Callisto Chieng. He says, hi, Roy, with the current fear and uncertainty around sight on investment and your explanation on investment around this time. Would you recommend an investor to pull out now? That's from Callisto Chieng. Those are the only questions coming in as at now. The rest are just appreciation for the thoughts you've shared and the nice presentation. So maybe you can have a go at those three.
All right. Thank you very much. These are big questions. They may be three, but they are very huge questions. They are very important questions. The question of when is the best time to liquidate your pension, I think that question answers itself. The best time to liquidate your pension, the ideal time to liquidate your pension is when it gets to a point where you consider it ripe for the reason as to why you started putting it aside. In this particular case, we were trying to take care of our retirement. So when that particular time comes, then we begin to look at the available options. Do I want to run away with my lump sum? Do I want to have an annuity arrangement where I can be receiving something at the end of the month and things like those? Do I want both options? Now, before then, I know there might come times when you are pushed to the wall. So what I was describing here is you must always evaluate your situation and see whether indeed you've been pushed to the wall or you just think you've been pushed to the wall. You know, sometimes in our resistance to change with the changing times, in our resistance to adjust our lifestyle, we will quickly think of liquidating into our pension account to help us sustain the way we are used to living. But the truth about money is that sometimes a time comes when you have to really audit your current lifestyle and see whether indeed it can be supported by your income, or you've been living a lie, you've been living somebody else's life. So it is up to us to get as honest as possible with ourselves and answer the question of whether we are truly pushed to the corner or we are trying to finance comfort. We don't want to trouble our comfort zone. So because times have been a bit turbulent and money is not coming in the way it used to come, but I must sustain my standard, then let me think of breaking into this so that it can help me here. Or I've also met people who want to break it to start a new business. And they've gotten an idea from somewhere that maybe if they go into business, business is the way to go and they will make a lot of money. They can quickly replenish that account. Let me sound a little warning here. Business world is a very interesting world. It is true that you can make a lot of money in business, but it is also true that you can burn your fingers enough times in business. As I mentioned before, business obeys the law of process. And sometimes we grab what we think are brilliant business ideas from people whose stories we do not understand. We walk down the streets saying we are looking for a business idea. I'm looking for a business that seems to be working. I can see people are full in this particular shop. I think if I started this particular shop somewhere, I will not go wrong. So because you don't have the capital, you may succumb to the temptation to liquidate your pension to start that business. But I want you to also help me wonder why many mainstream financial institutions are not comfortable lending to startups. It is because of the risk involved. You are starting something, no one can tell you whether it will succeed or not. You are starting something on faith. You are starting something on speculation. You are starting something just because you saw people doing well in it. Chances are high that people could be flocking into a shop and the shop is making a loss. Business is a very interesting area. So you also have to be very keen as to what is motivating your need to liquidate that account. Is it a reason that is holding water, or is it a reason that is making you to avoid facing certain realities? As much as possible, let that account serve the purpose it was meant to serve. On the question of high-risk investment examples, I will answer this question broadly so that I also help someone else here capture something on the conversation of investment, because it's a huge conversation. And I want to say this: before you choose how or where you want to invest your money, there are two things that I find very crucial that you must answer yourself. Number one is the reason behind your need to invest. Why do you want to invest? What is the inspiration for you wanting to invest? Now, when you answer that question, it begins to filter, it begins to sieve out certain options. For example, you may want to invest so that you can begin to have income coming in to supplement your salary. That is someone who wants an option that can allow them to access money periodically. It is different from someone who wants to invest in an option that will solve their problem many years to come. Then they can afford to look for long-term solutions. So when you know why you want to invest, the reasoning behind it, or your expectations in an investment option, then it begins to sieve options that may not answer to your need. Number two that you must consider is your risk appetite. What we may not change is that we all perceive and respond to risk differently. And that is just the whole conversation about the differences that we have as human beings. And the diversity in our humanness is so huge that we cannot ignore. The truth is we respond differently to risk and the conversation of risk. There are people amongst us who will say, I would rather get very small returns, but I have my capital intact. There are people who do not, let me not say they do not care. They care, but their skin is thick enough to accommodate risk, because they will move swiftly into options that show up in the market. They will be trying everything everywhere. They will lose their money today, tomorrow they will gain in a different place. To them, the risk conversation is just another statement. They have a thicker skin. The risk conversation also depends with where we are in terms of age and many other things. As we advance in age, our appetite and ability to take up high-risk things begins to dwindle. I do not expect us, as we retire, I have met also enough examples here, as we retire and we've been given that last amount, and that is the time we want to invest in very high-risk options. That's the time we want to invest with people who are promising us to give us some little heaven down here, so that then we can make up maybe for the things we did not do when we were employed, so that we can be able to catch up. In the world of wealth creation, patience can also not be eliminated from the process. So you must also understand what your risk appetite looks like. If you are that person who says, I want to make sure that my capital, I cannot easily handle the truth that I have lost my capital, then it begins to sieve off options that are threatening the survival of your capital. But if you're that person who says, I want an option that gives me returns, then you are also the same person who will say, if I burnt my fingers, or if I lost my capital, or if it got eroded at some point, then I will be okay. I will understand that this is just how this game is. So those two things are very important when we consider investment options. So an option may not look like high risk for someone, but may look like high risk for another person. But options that you do not understand are definitely very high risk. If you don't understand what the person selling the option is saying, you've met people who come to where you work or they meet you and they explain something, maybe it's a new thing in the market, but you cannot catch it. You can't really seem to see the difference, rather the meaning out of what they're saying. I keep saying, always invest where you understand what happens there, or you have convinced yourself, you are at peace with your level of inquiry into where you want to put your money. Don't just give money because someone has promised returns that are looking beautiful. Because the day you burn your fingers, there is nothing as bad as coming back to say, I wish I asked around. I wish I took some more time. I wish I considered this or the other. If someone is promising to give you returns, ask yourself, what do they do with my money that will give them high returns for them to pay me what they have promised me that already looks high, and for them to retain their profit because they're also in business? If it doesn't make sense, don't walk away, just run. Then there was a question about Cyton and all the things that have been happening around them lately. Could it be a time for someone to pull out now or not? I will also try to say something here that may help another person who may not necessarily be talking about Cyton. When you get into investment, where your money is, your heart will also be there. Don't put your money somewhere and you stop monitoring what is happening in that particular world, because as you begin to get into the investment world, one of the things you must also know is when to tell when the time is ripe for you to either thin out from that option or for you to sign out. We don't have options that we call lifelong options a lot of times. Sometimes circumstances change and they begin to affect the liquidity of the companies that we have invested in and things like those. So it's important for you to keep your ears on the ground. And if you had invested in the money market, for example, in options where you have given them your money for them to trade with it, and then when you will need your money, they should be able to give you your money. When you wake up and hear that certain companies or outfits are beginning to struggle with their liquidity, they're beginning to have trouble having liquid money, that means they will not be able to comfortably meet their short-term obligations. That means if you invested with them with the promise that whenever you will need your money, we will give you, it means that that promise is already threatened. So if you've put your money in a place where you're already hearing that people are complaining, that they are calling for their money and they are being taken round in circles, then you need to analyze your chances and begin to make a decision to quickly, because that could be your time to exit and also transfer your thing to another place. So I will leave it there for now without mentioning names, so that then we can begin to help someone else who may not be with Cyton or may not be with another investor to also know that it's important. Once you begin to see telltale signs of danger, you compare the danger that is being spoken about with your nature of investment with them and begin to see how it gets to affect you. If it affects you directly, you have every reason to get worried. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roy. We have, I think, 2 or 3 more questions, and then we close this.
All right.
So question number 1, somebody's just asking, how do they get the books?
Okay.
Then question number 2 is coming from one Jeff Wanakasha. He says, I cannot pretend to be an investor. I am also not a big spender. What advice do you have for someone like me to secure and achieve a sound future financial life? That is from Jeff. And then the last question we are going to take for today is from Mangalia. Mangalia says, would you advise someone to invest in a life assurance where the premium is fixed for a period of 5 or 10 years, but with variable interest?
Wow,
Yes.
wow. Interesting. So let me start with Jeff. Jeff is not pretending to be an investor. He's also not a spender. In the language of money personalities, Jeff is moving closer to the people we would want to call hoarders. Hoarders are people who are careful in the way they spend their money, and they try to retain as much of their money as possible. They believe that a lot of their power is drawn from just accumulating money around them. And forgive me, Jeff, if I'm not talking about you, but I'm just making a statement that is broad. And and that is they enjoy their peace, knowing that they do not overspend, but they also have a risk of not being comfortable with giving out their money in the form of investment or in the form of spending. However, as I mentioned before, that we all have a right to make money, to have money and have it in plenty. So whether you are not a spender or you are not an investor today does not mean that you do not have a right to have an abundance of financial resources. Everyone can take themselves through the wealth creation cycle. And the wealth creation cycle, briefly, is a process where money is allowed to walk through continuously some 3 stages that I figured out. The first stage is where everyone is. That is the stage of money acquisition and management. I call them boxes. So in this first box, this is where all of us are. This is where we go to work to make money. This is where we do business to make money. And when the money has come, this is where we make choices. Where will we spend the money? How will we spend the money? This is where we manage the money. If we make bad choices, this is where we burn our fingers and begin to get trapped into debt, the first box. But as you spend your money, you must remember that you should spend your money in a way that will not only sustain you, but also allow you to put aside part of the money as seed for future multiplication. So don't just budget, allowing yourself to be sustained only. Also remember that part of the money needs to be put aside for future multiplication. Now, that is the second box that I call the box of money retention. We don't judge people by how much they earn. We judge people, if we must judge people, by how much they can retain. There are people who will earn $1 million and every month they spend 1.1. There are people who will earn 20,000, but every month they can save 5,000. In the world of wealth creation, the 20,000 guy is far much better than the other person. Now, once you start retaining your money, it does not stop there. There is nothing interesting in just looking at your account with a balance bulging or just staying intact because of 2 things. One is that your money will suffer the consequences of inflation. If inflation were to hit, then if your money was enough to buy 10 loaves of bread, it will begin to buy 2 loaves of bread in future. Then secondly is because you will also face the temptation to use the money when needs begin to show up. I'm sure you've seen every time you have money, that's when needs begin to show up. That's when calls begin to come. That's when, in quotes, people begin to fall sick and things like those. So if you're just sitting with your money where it can be accessed in an account, just being happy that your money is sitting there, then you are not moving forward. You are just where you are, and there's a temptation for you to spend the money. So you should also be focused in such a way that you tell yourself that money shouldn't just sit idle. I should send out money to work for me, to call for more money, because I have said many times that money is the best employee. When you send money to work for you, you place your money in a better place. Then money has no mood swings. Money does not get tired. Money never goes to bed to sleep. So as you sleep, your money will still be working for you. So the third box is the box of money multiplication, where after you have retained some money, you choose to allow it to go and call for more money. That more money will happen in that box of multiplication where you are now investing the money. Depending on where you invest the money, you are expecting returns at the end of the day. The returns could be called interest. The returns could be called dividends. The returns could be called profit, depending on where you chose to invest your money. Now, those returns go back to point to the first box of money acquisition and management. So the more you do this process, the more the first box bulges. That means the more you will be able to retain. So the second box will also be bulging. That means the more you'll be able to multiply. So with time, your resources throughout the process will keep growing and growing and growing. To the question about life assurance, again, it will come back to the 2 things that I mentioned. I have met people who will go into investing into insurance options without knowing exactly why they are getting into those options. And that explains why there will be a disconnect between the expectations and what happens when maturity of some of the options happen. But one thing that I believe, which I have seen work mathematically, if you pick an option, and especially the life option, an option that does not have other divergent promises attached to it, and then you answer yourself the question of why you need that particular policy, then it stands a better chance than an option that comes clothed as solving two things at a time. You have met options that are answering to a need, but at the same time, they're also answering to an investment need. So at one point, you have insured yourself for something that will happen, or rather, you've safeguarded a future. And then at the same time, you've been told the same policy enables you to be an investor, and we will also pay you this particular thing at this particular time. What you might be doing is also stabbing yourself in the foot, because the returns in many of such options that promise two things at a go are usually very disappointing in many cases. So for cases of life and any other policy that may be focused, but life is usually more focused, as long as it is straight and it does not have other attachments to it, it is not promising many other things subsidiary to it, then it might answer to your expectations in future if you understand why you are getting there. If you don't understand, take your time to really understand. But as much as it's possible, if you want to play in the insurance space, be very cautious with options that are promising many things, one thing solving many other things, because it begins to dent into your returns at the end of the day. There is nothing as bad as what people that I meet crying about what they thought would happen after 15 years of contributing monthly to an option, when they get to see the reality of what they receive in their account versus what they thought they will receive. And also make sure to just get as much information as possible, because sometimes you will be sold information that is appealing to your emotions, so that then you get to sign the papers. But when reality will dawn 10 years, 5 years, 15 years down the line, you realize, hey, you are better off putting that money in a different thing that would have done much, much better. But let's keep this conversation going. As I say that, I am talking to the one who asked about the books. I'm also trying to answer anyone who will ask about how I can be found. I want to believe the screen is still active with all of us. If you need any of these books, just text or WhatsApp any of the numbers given there. Just mention that you need the book, or if you need any other thing, any of my other services, just inbox me.
Hello, Roy. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. You're back online. I thought I.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, please proceed.
Thank you, thank you. So I was saying, for anyone who needs the books or anyone who needs to get in touch for any other reason, the contacts are as they are on your screens. Simply inbox on WhatsApp or text or call. But if the call is not picked, maybe I'm in an engagement, feel free to just text or WhatsApp. We do deliver books to any part of the country, so do not be limited just because you come from a different place other than Nairobi. Just mention, we will send you a full catalog of the books, but at least you've seen the prices. Then you can make your selection, and then we can arrange on how you get the book delivered to you. Let's also connect on all the social media platforms. My handles are as you can see on the screen. And the YouTube page is there down, as I had mentioned, where you'll also find extensions to parts of this conversation that I have recorded before. Thank you so much, and I hope I have tried to address as many of these as possible. You can do better, and God bless you.
Indeed, we can all do better. Thank you very much, Roy, for ending us on that. It's been an interesting engagement, and looking at the questions that are coming through, looking at the appreciation we are receiving. I'm sure we have all learned a thing or two about how we can navigate through these challenging COVID times and also emerge as better people, as better money managers. So thank you very much, Roy, for your time, and we really, really, really appreciate it. It's been very informative. It's been eye-opening and thought-provoking as well. So I hope from what we have all learned, we could change a thing or two about how we handle our finances. So really, really, thank you very much, Roy.
You're welcome. Thank you too.
And that brings us to the end of our session for today. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for spending time with us. We went overboard by about 24 minutes, but that's because of the technical challenges we experienced a little earlier. But all in all, we've managed to go through the entire engagement, and now we are at the end. So thank you. On behalf of the management and staff of Kanisa Sacco, let me thank you once again for finding time to join us. And we hope that this series helps you to, we hope that this series helps you to become a more active and more engaged members of the society. Remember what Roy has said, even amid challenging times like this, do not shortchange your savings. Do not shortchange your savings. So this is not the time to withdraw. This is not the time to say, I will not put something aside. Whatever you can, please. And those of you who may have challenges with your debt, as again Roy has said, there are all those options. You can reach out to the office and talk to us, and for sure we can find a way of helping you to also navigate through these challenging times. So on that note, let me ask the chair of the circle, Madam Anne Kioi, to just close it for us with a word. Anne?
Good afternoon, members. And I'm happy that you are able to join us. Thank you, Roy Okonji, for taking us through that session. We really appreciate the strategies that you've really given to us and to our members on how to respond to these realities amidst this COVID-19. I would like to thank our members who are able to join us and even those who are following us on Facebook. We don't take it for granted that you sacrifice your time to be with us. We thank you, and we hope that all the strategies that has been shared by Roy, you'll be able to implement them. We also thank Roy also for the books also that you've said that you have published. We'll be looking forward to having them. And at these challenging times, as Roy has said, most of the strategies that he has shared would urge our members to not panic, as Roy has told us, especially in addressing your debt, that you reach out to your lender, and your lender here is Kanisa Sacco. We've always, since COVID-19 started, been encouraging you to talk to us. We listen to you, and there are all those options that the office will be able to work with you to address your debt. We all know that these are challenging times. They have hit us hard. We've heard even at the beginning how COVID has affected our members. I take also this opportunity to give my condolences also to those members who posted on the chat. They have also lost loved ones. We know it's a devastating reality, but our condolences to all our members that have lost loved ones during this COVID-19 pandemic. So we thank you all for joining us. Thank you for being patient. We appreciate your support, and continue being members of Kanisa Sacco. We also thank those who are also interested in the projects that I've seen on the chat. Some are asking whether there are plots available. Would want to take this opportunity also to tell you that Kanisa Holding also has some plots that you're offering along Kangundo Road, Koma Shrine. So reach out to the office and you'll be able to get a sample of the plots that are remaining. So let's invest wisely. Let's also manage our debt. And we pray that during these challenging times, we are going to overcome it. So thank you all. With those few rewards, I hand it over to the education for the evaluation.
Thank you, Anne. For the purposes of evaluation, I'll just like all of us to take a minute or two to post in the chat Three things. Number one, what did you like about the session? Number two, what did you not like? And number three, what do you think we can improve? So just take a minute or two to type that into the chat. Take a minute or two, just type something in the chat. And then Albert Mackenzie will close for us with a word of prayer. Albert, please be ready. So post on the chat, what did you like? What did you not like? How would you like us to improve on these virtual engagements? Okay, as you post that, let me call on Albert Mackenzie to, oh, he has already left. Okay, so let's pray as we close this. Our dear Heavenly Father, we come before you this afternoon, thanking you for the gift of life and for allowing us to converge virtually at this moment, even as we discuss about how we can better manage our resources. We pray for your wisdom as members of the society, and we pray that you continue giving us the strength to work hard, the strength to do our best in everything that we are encountered with, and also the wisdom to be able to manage those resources that you have endowed us with for the glory and honor of your name. Father, we thank you even as we get back to our different activities, that you continue watching over us, you continue keeping us safe and our families, that you give us also the strength to navigate through this tough COVID-19 period. And when we meet again, I will be careful enough to say thank you. We bless your name, for it is in Jesus' name we pray and believe. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon. We'll leave the chat box open. You can still feel free to post whatever you like to share with us, either in terms of how you liked the session, what you did not like, or any comment you like to leave for the circle or the facilitator. Thank you.